All right, let's dive right into one of the absolute most jaw-dropping moments in human history. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to break down the incredible tactical realities and, honestly, the profound emotional weight behind what is arguably the most famous last stand ever recorded, the Battle of Thermopylae.
Picture this. The year is 480 BC, 300 men against 100,000 soldiers. We're looking at a tiny, heavily outnumbered force staring down this impossible, seemingly endless empire. It's an extreme David versus Goliath scenario, defined by a single, monumental decision. A decision that would buy just enough time to literally change the entire course of human civilization forever.
Section 1. An unstoppable Persian force.
100,000. Just wrap your head around that number for a second. Persian King Xerxes had amassed an army of at least 100,000 soldiers. For the ancient world, this wasn't just a big army, this was the absolute largest fighting force humanity had ever seen. Imagine looking out over a valley and seeing an army so vast it practically looks like a dark flood covering the earth. I mean, nobody dared stand against him.
In fact, Xerxes didn't even think he'd need to fight. He just sent messengers out with a simple diplomatic demand: water and earth. Basically, the total surrender of a city's lands and resources. And practically every kingdom and city-state he approached, they just dropped to their knees in immediate submission. Every single one. Except, of course, for Sparta.
So why didn't Sparta just bow down? Well, that really comes down to their leader. King Leonidas didn't tremble at the sight of Xerxes' massive army because he had been forged in brutal, relentless military training since he was a 7-year-old kid. His greatest teachers weren't philosophers. They were hunger, cold, pain, and blood. He looked at impossible odds with absolute, ice-cold discipline. Knowing exactly what was coming, Leonidas handpicked a highly specific vanguard. He reviewed his finest warriors, but he only selected exactly 300 men. And here's a detail that is absolutely wild. He deliberately ensured that every single man he chose was a father. He specifically wanted men who had sons so that their family lines and their memory would carry forward after the battle. Make no mistake, they knew exactly what they were walking into.
Section 2. The Hot Gates Choke Point.
So how do you even logically fight those odds? In open ground, Xerxes' 100,000 soldiers would have flanked and crushed the Spartans in a matter of minutes. Just game over. But Leonidas brilliantly chose to make his stand at Thermopylae, which translates to the Hot Gates. It was this incredibly narrow mountain pass where the cliffs press right up tightly against the sea. When you compare that tiny sliver of 300 Spartans to the massive Persian force, it's just a mathematical absurdity. But because Leonidas chose that specific narrow pass, Xerxes' greatest weapon, his endless numbers, became completely useless. The pass was so tight that the Persians could only send a handful of men forward at a time. The math simply ceased to matter.
Section 3. Holding the line.
Okay, so the battle begins. On day 1, wave after wave of confident Persian soldiers charge forward, only to just crash and fall against an unbreakable, perfectly disciplined Spartan shield wall. A crazy historical detail here is that many of those Persian soldiers were equipped with lightweight wicker shields, basically useless against heavy Greek bronze weaponry. It was a total slaughter. Then, on day 2, a terrified Xerxes sends in his elite personal guard, the feared Immortals, thinking they'll finally break the impasse. But no, they too are violently pushed back. For 2 grueling days, the Spartans held the line flawlessly.
Gripped by silent horror as he's watching his absolute best man get destroyed, Xerxes becomes desperate. He actually decides to try and literally buy Leonidas out. He offers the Spartan king wealth beyond imagination and absolute rule over all of Greece if he would just lay down his weapons and surrender the pass.
But Leonidas, he doesn't negotiate. He doesn't counteroffer. He just sends back a chilling 4-word response: Malan Labe. Come and take them. It completely captures the ultimate spirit of defiance, literally daring this massive, world-conquering empire to try and break their line.
Section 4. The Traitor's Hidden Path. But what raw military power couldn't break, human greed eventually did. Under the cover of darkness, a local Greek man named Ephialtes crept into the Persian camp. Motivated entirely by a hunger for Persian gold coins, he sold out his own people. He whispered a terrifying secret to Xerxes. There was a hidden mountain goat path that went right around the cliffs, allowing an army to completely bypass the Spartan chokehold. When morning light breaks over the mountains, Leonidas gets the devastating news. The Immortals were marching down the path right behind them. The unbreakable choke point had been flanked. In just a matter of hours, they'd be surrounded on open ground. That genius tactical advantage was completely, irreversibly gone.
Section 5. The Ultimate Sacrifice.
Leonidas stands in silence, looks at his men with perfectly calm eyes, and gives his final orders. He ordered the main Greek army, the thousands of allies who had joined them, to retreat to safety while the path behind them was still open. But the 300 Spartans? They stayed. And they didn't stay out of obligation either. They stayed because they deliberately chose to make the ultimate sacrifice. Every single Spartan fell that day, but their bloody final stand bought the exact amount of precious time the rest of Greece desperately needed to survive. The Athenian navy used those exact days to regroup and eventually destroyed the Persian fleet at Salamis. Xerxes won the hot gates, sure, but because of those 300 men, he completely lost the whole war. Which brings us to the core of this whole explainer. Why? Why charge into an ocean of arrows? Why hold the line when you know for an absolute fact you cannot survive? What drove these guys to smile at impossible odds when they could have just easily retreated? They did not fight because they believed they would live. They sacrificed absolutely everything so that 2.5 millennia later, you and I would still be talking about them, and their incredible stand for freedom would never be forgotten. Which leaves us with one final question to ask ourselves today. What is your hot gates, and what are you willing to sacrifice to hold the line?